By now, you've probably heard the headlines. South Korea is disappearing, South Korea's low birth rate, blah blah blah. Elon Musk famously tweeted that at this rate the peninsula might eventually be empty. With a birth rate that plummeted to 0.72, experts have dubbed this population cliff a demographic collapse so steep it threatens the very survival of the nation. But amidst this gloom, a strange headline flickered in 2024. The number of marriages in South Korea suddenly jumped by 14.8%. After a decade of freefall, people wondered, is the crisis over? Are young Koreans finally falling in love again? Well, the reality is more of a math trick than a romantic revival. When you look closer, this wasn't a change of heart, but a change of timing. Most of that jump was actually just a backlog of couples who delayed their weddings during COVID-19, or savvy pairs finally registering their marriage after milking the benefits of their single status, like separate low-interest housing loans. So the economic pressure hadn't vanished, and people were just navigating around it. But hidden in that data was a much more significant permanent shift. Interestingly, in 2023, international marriages in Korea surged by 18.3%, and by 2024, the momentum continued as the number of international marriage reached more than 20,000 cases, a 5.3% increase from the previous year's 19,000. So what does this mean for the big picture? International marriages now account for 10% of all weddings in this country. In other words, almost 1 out of 10 newlywed couples in Korea is now finding their love across borders. This rate is holding steady and is only predicted to increase. For a Western viewer, that might not sound shocking, but you have to understand that Korea is historically one of the most ethnically homogeneous countries on Earth, and we've traditionally taken immense pride in that single bloodline identity. So this leaves us with the big question. Why are Koreans, who are notoriously picky about status, wealth, and background, suddenly deciding that their best chance at happiness lies across the oceans? So we have to first look at this question. Why is it so hard for Koreans to marry other Koreans? It turns out that the marriage market here has transformed into a brutal survival audition. Now let's be clear, there are many structural reasons for Korea's low birth rate. Personally, I think the biggest problem is the astronomical housing cost, the job insecurity, and the crushing expenses of private education for kids. But lately, a more visceral term has been trending on social media: the auditioning of marriage. In most places, marriage is ideally about finding a partner. But in Korea's hyper-competitive climate, it feels like you're being graded on a scorecard. People aren't just looking for a soulmate, they're looking for a winner who can guarantee a middle-class life in a failing economy. And this brings us to a controversial word: hypergamy. Historically, men provided and women managed the home. And today, Korean women are just as successful as men, but the economic expectations haven't caught up to that reality. Many still feel the systemic pressure for the man to provide a perfect financial foundation. And the problem is that in today's economy, there aren't enough perfect men to go around with. This creates a massive bottleneck where everyone is stuck waiting for a partner that barely exists. And the pressure is extreme. To give you some perspective, a decent apartment in Seoul, the kind people actually want to raise a family in, now averages around $1 million. When the barrier to entry is $1 million, the audition becomes almost impossible for most people. And people often want a partner with a big corporate job, 6-figure salary, or in a specialized profession like law or medicine. And on top of the bank account, you have the self-management test, 자기 관리. For men, the bar is set at the golden standard. You should be around 180 centimeters tall, have a sharp fashion sense, and avoid looking like an aje, an old man, at all costs. And even if you pass all these tests, you still have to deal with family compatibility. I see this with my own friends as well. I have a friend who's incredibly kind and hardworking and okay looking, but because he's a civil servant worker in the countryside with an average paycheck, no house yet, little savings, a small Hyundai car for commute, he was rejected by potential partners over and over and over again. Well, at least that's what he believes is a big part of the reasoning. But he told me he felt like a failure simply because his specs didn't meet the market rate. And of course, it's not just men who are being graded. Women face their own brutal standards, specifically regarding age and appearance. In the world of high-end matchmaking agencies, they say a woman's grade starts dropping to a C level the moment she turns 30 and above. And nowadays, men are starting to expect women to have a certain amount of savings and a stable job as well. Because the economic system makes it so hard to succeed, both sides have set their barriers so high that they've trapped themselves in a cycle of fatigue. And this exhaustion has fueled a gender war so intense that international outlets often describe Korea as a country where men and women hate each other. I do have to say though, it's not always that serious in real life. Like, go to Han River, you'll see a bunch of gazillion of couples walking around, and you'll see people love bombing each other. So honestly, it's mostly an exaggerated internet phenomenon, but when the news and social media starts picking it up and publishing it for views, it definitely starts to poison the public mindset. So why does marriage feel like such a huge impossible task? It's because of the comparison disease, especially amplified by social media. Korea has one of the highest Instagram usage rates per capita in the world, and it's making the youth miserable. Every morning, the feed is flooded by luxury staycations, hokkangses, 5-star hotels unboxing Dior bags, driving Porsches, and it creates a suffocating FOMO effect. In Korea, you don't just get married for yourself. You have to prove to the digital world or your relatives or your friends that you've made it to the upper middle class. The financial burden of a Korean wedding has reached a level of collective madness. It starts with the ceremony, booking a trendy wedding hall, and renting a designer dress. That can all easily cost a couple between $30,000 to $50,000 and above. For studio photography, dress rental, and professional makeup, and this holy trinity of wedding prep ensures that the couple spends an entire day acting like movie stars on a film set. And while it sounds glamorous, it's a grueling and expensive ordeal with packages starting at $3,000 and often skyrocketing past $10K, depending on the prestige of a specific studio's name. The real final boss of cost comes through the honsu and yemur. Honsu involves furnishing the new home with top-tier appliances, a heavy burden usually placed on the bride, and this is followed by yemur, a high-stakes exchange of token gifts between the two families. And we aren't just talking about simple rings, we're talking about Rolex watches, Chanel bags, meant to signal social standing to both families and friends. In this environment, a wedding isn't just a union of two people. It's a high-cost performance of status that leaves many young people financially exhausted even before their life together begins. This pressure is literally pushing an entire generation into isolation. I myself want to do a small wedding. I do not want to do 30K, 40K weddings. However, the tradition and the culture here is just like that, and your parents expect you to do that as well. So it's very hard as an individual to escape that trap. Besides all of that, this is where international marriage comes in as a liberation of values. When you marry someone from a different culture, you can stop playing the Korean status game. As psychology Professor Yang Nan-mi notes, young Koreans exhausted by excessive competition and social ranking are increasingly seeking international relationships as a way to escape the system. It's an exit ramp from a race that no one can win. So let's look closer at what these international marriages actually look like in Korea today and why the trends are shifting so drastically. In the past, international marriage in Korea was almost synonymous with mail-order brides in rural farming towns, but those days are over. Today, everyone from office workers in Gangnam to university students in Hongdae are looking abroad. But here's the kicker: men and women are moving in totally different directions. Currently, the ratio of international marriages is roughly 75% Korean men marrying foreign women and 25% Korean women marrying foreign men. Because of this skew, the cultural shift we're seeing is heavily driven by the male perspective. One of the most shocking statistics recently is the explosion of Japanese partners. In 2023 alone, marriages between Korean men and Japanese women jumped by a staggering 40.2%, the biggest jump within 10 years, and this phenomenon has been widely publicized by the news, media, trying to analyze the reason behind it. If you know our history, it's pretty surprising, right? So why is this happening? According to the news and the sentiment from online communities, there is a clear reason. Many Korean men feel that Japanese women prioritize the idea of building a life together and are supportive of the journey rather than the starting point or the destination. You don't need a $1 million apartment. And one man summarized it perfectly in a news interview, saying, "When I dated Koreans, I often felt stuck in a relationship that wasn't going anywhere or felt too cautious to move forward, but with my Japanese partner, I felt an immediate emotional connection, like we were actually on the same team." And on the flip side, many Japanese women are drawn to Korean men, perceiving them as more expressive, romantic, and well-groomed than the more reserved men back in Japan. Now, I know these are often generalizations and stereotypes fueled by internet anecdotes, K-dramas, but the impact is real. The perception of international marriage has shifted from a last resort for those who can't marry locally to a favorable, trendy choice, a thought that would have been unthinkable to the previous generation. And surprisingly, it's not just happening in Japan. Thanks to the global explosion of K-pop and K-dramas, Korean men have gone from being overlooked to being seen as some of the most attractive men in Asia. Up till now, you might be wondering, okay, so what about the Korean women? While the numbers are smaller, Korean women are also looking outward, but they are largely heading west. Historically, Asian or Korean women have had a more established popularity in the global marriage market, but their motivations today are shifting. For many women, marriages with men from the US, Canada, or Europe represent a chance to escape the patriarchy rooted in traditional Confucianism in Korea. Specifically, they want to avoid the dreaded she-world, that high-pressure Korean in-law culture that can be incredibly overbearing for a daughter-in-law. And they're looking for horizontal relationships where chores are shared equally and the professional careers are genuinely respected rather than sidelined by tradition. Now, I want to be fair here. I know plenty of happily married, loving Korean couples, and a lot of what we see online are extreme generalizations fueled by gender war. And it's not that Korean guys don't do any housework at all. In fact, most younger men today are more than willing to share the load. And also, it's not that all Korean women are demanding or unprepared. Some women have already saved up sufficient amounts of money and look for just a decent guy with a kind heart. But because these negative narratives permeate our society, they create a ripple effect. And for many, international marriage looks like the only available escape hatch from a rigid social script. Speaking of romanticizing these unions, we have to talk about the massive catalyst, YouTube. If you search for Hanil Bubu or Gukje couple, you'll find thousands of channels, and most of them are wildly successful. I would say many of these creators act as pioneers, showing how to navigate life, visas, insurance, and family introductions in a foreign land and different culture. But naturally, because these channels are built on views, sometimes they have the tendency to focus on the highlights, which fuels a powerful fantasy. And from the men's perspective, it could be like, oh, look how happy he is because his foreign wife is so open-minded and appreciative. And from the women's perspective, it could be like, look how charming that Korean husband is, and their lifestyle in Seoul looks like a K-drama. But while these vlogs provide a somewhat romanticized, positive idea of international marriage, there is also an overlooked, much darker side to these recent statistics that we need to be careful about. For decades, a commercial matchmaking industry has thrived, particularly targeting Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam, Thailand, and Cambodia. And note that these are included into the international marriage stats as well. It's a supply and demand market born from a desperate marriage gap in rural Korea. As of 2023 statistics, the gender ratio in rural areas remain heavily skewed, with Vietnam alone accounting for 33.5% of all foreign brides in Korea. The process is staggeringly fast. Sometimes it happens fully remote. This speed marriage industry is often criticized as they often fall into a blind spot of legal protection. Some face severe abuse, extreme pressure from in-laws, or are forced into unpaid labor on family farms. And because the union wasn't built on love, but on a financial transaction, the foundation for happiness is dangerously thin. The pain goes both ways. Not all Korean husbands are the villains, and not all wives are the victims as well. There's a growing phenomenon of planned runaways where a spouse obtains residency and then disappears after a certain amount of time. There's also visa fraud where marriage is used simply as a ticket to enter the Korean job market. Many Korean men, often from lower income rural backgrounds, have lost their entire life savings and their hearts to these scams, with almost no legal recourse to recover their losses. And current Korean laws arguably make it worse. A foreign spouse's right to stay often depends on the Korean husband's guarantee or signature. This creates a toxic master and servant kind of dynamic instead of a husband and wife partnership. It's a recipe for disaster that treats human lives like commodities. Korea now has over 2.5 million foreign residents, making up roughly 4.9% of our population, and it's expected to grow. By OECD standards, we are officially standing on the doorstep of becoming a multicultural nation. But the big question remains, are we actually ready to live together? The concept of single ethnic group, 단일 민족, is slowly moving into the history books, and these 2.5 million people aren't just guests passing through. They are our co-workers, our neighbors, and fellow citizens, and most importantly, our loved ones as well. While the rebound in marriage numbers and the rise of international couples might look like a silver lining in the birth rate problem, we shouldn't be blinded by the statistics. International marriage isn't just a simple patch for a crisis. The survival of Korea doesn't depend on how many people we bring in, but how well we treat them. So we need to move past sponsorship laws that treat spouses like property and ensure that multicultural children can feel 100% included in our Korean society without the fear of being marginalized. Ultimately, international marriage shouldn't be a back door to escape a hard life, but a main gate to a better, more diverse Korea. And of course, for that gate to stay open, the root causes, the $1 million apartments, the intense competition, the collective social exhaustion, must be dealt with first. I've explored those deeper systemic issues in other videos, which you can check out right here on my channel. Please like and subscribe, and for more personal stories and exclusive takes on these topics, consider supporting the channel on Patreon. See you in the next one.